All right, today we're heading to Egypt to look at one of the biggest, boldest economic bets on the entire planet, a $300 billion gamble happening right on the banks of the world's most important waterway.
Yeah, we all remember the memes when the Ever Given got stuck and basically parallel parked itself sideways. But here's the thing, that whole spectacle, it was a massive distraction. Because while the entire world was staring at that boat in the water, something way, way bigger was happening on the sand, a project that could literally reshape global trade.
So, take a look at this number for a second. $19 million. Any guesses what that is? I'll give you a hint. It's not a daily total or even an hourly one.
That is the value of everything. Your phone, parts for your car, that coffee maker you ordered, that floats through that narrow strip of water every single minute. The canal isn't just a shortcut. It's the absolute jugular vein of the global economy. And this all boils down to one huge question. Is Egypt's massive project the birth of a new global logistics superpower, or is it a crazy, if you build it, they will come gamble in a really, really complicated neighborhood? Let's dig in.
Okay, so to really get what's at stake here, you have to understand the absolutely terrifying math that basically forced Egypt to make this bet in the first place. This really lays it all out. On one side, you have a massive, growing population of over 110 million people. On the other, you've got over $160 billion in external debt. Now, the canal brought in a record $9.4 billion last year, which sounds great, but that barely covers the interest payments on the debt. You don't have to be an economist to see that the status quo, well, it just wasn't going to work.
Egypt kind of woke up and realized it was stuck in what you could call the renter trap. You see, just owning the road and collecting tolls is actually a pretty low-margin business. Sure, you get the rent money, but you're missing out on all the real money being made along the journey. And this analogy is just perfect. For decades, the Suez Canal has been the toll booth. Egypt's goal with this new Suez Canal Economic Zone, or SCZ, is to build the world's biggest buckies right next to it. They don't just want the ships to pass through anymore. They want them to stop, unload, manufacture things, refuel, and then leave. That is where the real profit is.
So how do you pull that off? Well, you have to do something pretty radical. You have to create, essentially, a state within a state, a special zone designed to bypass the country's own biggest enemy, a mountain of bureaucracy.
The seeds for this were actually planted way back in 2002, but the real spark was in 2014, when President Sisi ordered the canal itself to be expanded. And they did it in just 1 year, which is insane. You could say that massive project was the plumbing, and the SCZ, launched in 2015, is the giant house they're now building on top of it. Now, the SCZ's core sales pitch, the big promise, is this one-stop-shop policy. And look, for anyone who's ever tried to do business in Egypt, you know the bureaucracy can be an absolute nightmare. The SCZ's promise is simple. Forget all the confusing ministries in Cairo. You deal with us. One authority, we handle everything. It's like a bubble of efficiency carved right out of the chaos. And they're not just promising less paperwork, they're throwing in some seriously sweet deals. We're talking zero customs tax on your machinery, zero sales tax on stuff you export, and 50-year rights to your land. But the real ace in the hole? It's the trade access. If you make something here, you can sell it tariff-free to billions of people across Europe, Africa, and the Middle East. That's a huge deal.
And you know what? An offer this good, it starts attracting some really big players, each one with their own strategic reason for being there. We're talking about China, Russia, and all the big green energy funds.
So why is China pouring billions of dollars in here? Well, it's basically a geopolitical magic trick. You see, Chinese companies are facing heavy tariffs in Europe, so they ship their parts to their own industrial zone in Egypt, put them together, slap a Made in Egypt sticker on the box, and poof, suddenly zero tariffs. It's a backdoor to the entire European market. Now, Russia, they're playing a completely different game, a much more desperate one, honestly. For them, the SCZ is a potential lifeline, what some are calling a sanctions laundromat. The idea is to bring in Russian parts, add just enough local value in their zone, rebrand the final product as Egyptian, and boom, you can now access global markets that were totally closed off. But you know, having a plan and making it happen are two very different things, and you can really see that contrast here. The Chinese zone, it's up and running, humming with over 200 companies. The Russian zone, on the other hand, is, well, it's still mostly a construction site. It's been bogged down by all the complexities of trying to move money out of a sanctioned economy. Okay, so you've got the Chinese backdoor and the Russian laundromat, but there's a third major play here, and this one's all about green energy.
With Europe desperate for any fuel that isn't Russian, Egypt is pitching itself as the world's first green gas station. They're using their incredible sun and wind to produce green hydrogen and green ammonia to refuel the thousands of ships that pass their door every year. But look, building this kind of dream, especially in the middle of the desert, it is not easy. Not by a long shot. The project has faced massive obstacles, from physical bottlenecks and digital red tape to some really intense regional competition.
So you had these two massive bottlenecks. First, the physical one. The Sinai was basically an island. Trucks would have to wait for days just to get a ferry across the canal. The solution? Billions of dollars on enormous tunnels that cut that crossing time down to just 20 minutes. Then there was the digital problem, a paper-based customs system that could hold up your cargo for almost a month. The fix for that is a new digital platform that's cut release times to around 9 days. Now that's a huge improvement, but it's still not exactly world-class.
And then, of course, you've got the competition. It is a tough neighborhood. Morocco's Tangier Medport is already a stable, super efficient leader in the region, and then you have Saudi Arabia building SCZone, this futuristic city with a simple pitch, infinite money and sci-fi tech. Egypt's big advantage right now is that the SCZ is actually up, running, and growing, while SCZone is still, well, it's still mostly a PowerPoint deck and a construction site.
So, after looking at all this, the good, the bad, the ugly, what's the verdict? Is this colossal project gonna boom? Or is it destined to be a bust? The case for failure? I mean, it's pretty obvious. Just look at the headlines. Regional instability, Houthi attacks messing with shipping, a collapse in currency. Those things can definitely scare away investors. But the case for success is just as powerful. At the end of the day, you simply cannot beat Egypt's geography. They have a huge labor force, those unique trade deals we talked about, and, this is key, real revenue is finally starting to flow in.
And this really gets to the heart of the matter. From a global perspective, the SCZ is almost too big to fail, because the alternative to this project working isn't just a failed industrial zone. It could be a failed state of 110 million people right on the Mediterranean. And trust me, that is a movie nobody wants to see. So let me just leave you with this final question. A little thought experiment. Knowing all the risks, knowing the potential rewards, and knowing the geopolitics at play, would you invest your life savings in a factory in the Sinai? It's a high-stakes poker game, for sure, and the entire world is watching to see what card gets turned over next.